Hi, it's Pastor Andy with our Friday preview, and we are back to Romans. We've had a couple of weeks away from Romans as we had a guest talk to us on Hub Sunday, and then last week was our annual Labor for the Sun Day, and so we are back in Romans. We are about to finish chapter 3. If you'll recall, the last time we covered Romans, it was what I call the greatest paragraph written by man in the history of the world. I'm not the one who has actually made that claim. Many have. And that was based upon Romans 3, verses 21 through 26. And over the past couple of weeks, actually 3 weeks, we've looked at our daily videos, have looked even more in depth at some of that. This week, we're going to finish the chapter beginning in verse 27 through 31. And I want to ask this question: can boasting and faith coexist? Now, in some ways, you might say, well, sure, they can, but boasting is really about what we have done, whereas faith is about what we expect might happen. Some might say that we could boast in the expectations that we have, but I'm reminded of the parable that Jesus told of the rich man in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 21. And in that parable, the rich man is he's wealthy. He's called the rich man. He's wealthy. He has a bountiful harvest, and he's ready to sit back and retire. He's just ready to enjoy the rest of his life. So he stores up his grain, and he's ready to just live high on the hog, so to speak. Of course, if he's Jewish, he wouldn't live high on the hog because that would be against their culture. But what he did not know was that his very life would be taken from him that night. It would be demanded from him that night. And so we don't really get the idea that he boasted in his wealth, that he boasted in what he had, but what he boasted about indirectly was his expectations towards the future. He thought he had plenty enough to just enjoy the future, but his future was going to be done. So really, that's a matter of faith. So I would argue that faith and boasting does not coexist. And that's the exact point that Paul makes in this last part. He begins by talking about what are we going to boast about? How can we boast if it's all about faith? And then he begins to lay out the idea of faith, not just in these last verses of chapter 3, but throughout chapter 4 and even into chapter 5 as well. So for us, we need to realize that faith is really a trust beyond ourselves. Boasting is about what we ourselves can do, and there is nothing that we can boast about. There is nothing that we can do to please God, to earn God's favor, to have Him extend more grace or anything like that. We certainly cannot earn our salvation. But as it relates to faith, and not just any faith, but a faith in Jesus, a faith in what Jesus has done, as Paul wrote in Romans 3:22, just a few verses prior. It is that kind of faith that matters. And so we're going to be looking at these verses and these 3 areas of boasting that the Jews did, and frankly, that we often do as well.